In the United States and Western Europe, all the mainstream journalists are hysterical about Trump meeting with Putin. Trump is so bad. The most annoying part of all this hysteria is that the underlying reality of the relationship between the United States and Russia remains undiscussed, because the manner in which mainstream journalists talk about this topic seems to be suggesting that the relationship between the United States and Russia depends on whether or not these two individuals quote-unquote get along. If they like each other and get along, the relationship between these two states can improve, and if they do not like each other and do not get along, the relationship between these two states will not improve.
Getting along with Russia is a good thing, not a bad thing.
Whether or not Trump and Putin get along is irrelevant to the relationship between the United States and Russia. This is the case because there exists a fundamental conflict of interest between the United States and Russia. This conflict of interest is very deep and probably irresolvable. The United States is a global superpower. As a global superpower, it is in the interest of the United States to prevent that there will ever rise a power that can challenge them. After the Soviet Union fell, this fundamental interest has been put on paper in the form of the so-called Wolfowitz Doctrine. This is the unofficial name given to the early version of the defense strategy for the 1990s, the Regional Defense Strategy Report for the fiscal period between 1994 and 1999, which was written down by former Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, Paul Wolfowitz. In practice, this means that no regional power should be able to dominate its region, and therefore the Eurasian continent must remain unstable and divided. According to George Friedman, the recently resigned founder of the American geopolitical intelligence platform, Stratfor, US foreign policy has been focusing, among other things, on cutting Russia into pieces, literally, because if this region would no longer be one large country but instead multiple smaller countries, Eurasia would be much more divided and less stable, which would be good for the United States.
What does affect the United States? Eurasia consists of 5/7 of the world's population. That group of people and the resources of the Eurasian landmass can overwhelm the United States. The United States has two strategic interests. The first, the control of the sea. The second thing is we do not want a unified Eurasia. We can become more specific. Our primary interest is to make sure that Russia and Germany do not form an entente. The primordial interest of the United States, over which for a century we have fought wars, the First, Second Cold War, has been the relationship between Germany and Russia, because united they are the only force that could threaten us.
This is also why Trump recently demanded that Germany cancelled their pipeline plan with Russia, because if Russian natural resources were to be combined with German industriousness, the result could be a potential power that might end up being able to potentially challenge the United States. And therefore Russia and Germany should never be able to create a stable relationship and work together. So that was the United States. Russia, on the other hand, is a substantial power that has had incredible historical accomplishment, including the victory over Napoleon and the victory over Nazi Germany. Russia has always been a major regional power, but it has never been the number one power in the world. So there is a gap between their ambition and their real situation. Russia wants to be a very special and great power, but in reality isn't. It is in the interest of Russia to have a buffer zone around their core region that is at least neutral, because this is what has worked for them historically. So to summarize the dynamic between the United States and Russia, United States strategy is do not allow a country to dominate its region, and Russian strategy is let's dominate our region. So the United States and Russia have a fundamental conflict of interest that has nothing to do with the men in charge of these two states. If you were to replace Trump with Beyoncé and Putin with Charmander, the two states still will not end up getting along. Whether or not Trump and Putin get along won't matter. This is something to keep in mind, as the international left, as always, is making hysteria without actually knowing what it is all about. And I think that it is quite a shame that also in Europe there isn't any intellectual elite that is addressing these issues. News shows and talk shows are dominated by extremely simplistic perspectives and do not allow for real in-depth analyses. I'd say that it is important for the Europeans to know that the interests of those elements within the United States system which drive foreign policy are not necessarily the interest of the European people. The Wolfowitz doctrine is not in the interest of Europe, because even allied nations shouldn't be able to become too influential and too powerful. It is not a surprise that American think tanks in the area of geopolitics are now suddenly worried about Germany, because the size of the German economy has been increasing quite a lot. Now, I don't think there is a need for this, because Germany will end up like the Balkan region in a few decades, but it is important to note anyway. So thanks for watching this video. Please click the big red button to subscribe and click to receive a notification so that you don't have to miss any video.